I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work, the Yuwad and Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all First Nations, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who may be watching today's episode.
What's Mike's problem? Oh, the drugs are the problem. Talk to Mike and I go, the drugs are my solution to the problem, which is living life, sitting with myself, being okay.
You have come here from a place of pain and suffering. Why the pain? Not why the addiction, why the pain?
We don't actually give anybody any tools to regulate themselves until step 11, where the meditation comes in. And I think that should be like step 1 is like learn to regulate your nervous system before you go into this work. I wanted to address the stuff that was driving those behaviors instead of just taking those behaviors away from people.
Welcome to shtsfckedpodcast, the podcast that gets real about addiction, mental health, and everything in between. I'm Paris, and I spent 17 years battling the bottle, 10 years hooked on meth, and I also did a stint in the escorting world, which nearly cost me everything, including my life. With both lived and professional experience, including qualifications in alcohol and other drugs, I'm here to share what I've learned along the way. Every journey's unique, and this podcast brings you stories, insights, and practical tools to help you find what works for you. Now, just a disclaimer, we dive into some tough topics here, including addiction, all forms of abuse, trauma, mental illness, suicide, self-harm, and the realities of life in recovery. These discussions can be intense, so please take care while listening and just make sure you're in the right headspace too. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast. Your support actually helps us more than you know, and it's one of the best ways to keep these conversations going. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, Mike Miller. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm just going to dive straight on into it. Could you share a little bit about your personal background and what kind of led you to found the Yatra Centre, which I believe is in, correct me if I'm wrong, Krabi, Thailand? Is that right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
That journey, that story starts very young. I don't know if I would have time to go into all the details, but, very simply, grew up in an alcoholic home. Father's an alcoholic. I got into drinking at around the age of 12, cannabis, psychedelics, cocaine, heroin by 19. An addiction took off and it was my whole life at some points. Selling drugs, using drugs. That was mostly what was going on in my life. Tried to get clean at 30 years old and went to a place that was very AA based, run by a master sergeant in the army. And it was like it was like punishing, shaming, it was like being in boot camp kind of thing. And I didn't respond well to that because I was very sensitive, scared. Obviously, I'd never been to treatment before. Lasted 4 days. And after being punished for being sick, like I was withdrawing, I got punished for that and told I would spend the weekend with no books, no TV, no nothing, like basically sit and stare at a wall. While everyone else went to an AA convention. I just thought, you know what, like I'm not going to sit here and just suffer like this. So I left, swore up and down that I wouldn't used before I got home. And then a year and a half later, I went back to treatment. Again, it was very 12-step based, and they gave me, is government funded in Canada. So, they gave me structure and safety and support, but they didn't have anyone with any sort of training. So no actual therapy. And then I was clean for a while, and people would be like, you're doing great. You're like a year clean. You're 2 years clean. But I was still not okay. I was acting out in other ways, compulsive sexuality and stuff like that. And people would say, you're doing great. And I couldn't understand because I didn't feel great. And the problem was that treatment didn't address the underlying issues. They took away the drugs and the alcohol, basically my medicine, but left me with all the pain without going into it. So, I stayed clean. I started going to school, started working in treatment I was working in treatment from 6 months clean. So I've been doing it for about 21 years or something. And through that, working in inpatient treatment, 12-step based, outpatient treatment, inpatient in like luxury rehab, not 12-step based, medical monitoring, all kinds of different areas of the field. During COVID, when it started, I was working at a big rehab in Thailand. And then I had to shift my practice to online. And I had been trained in EMDR. And my focus started going more to the trauma end of things, because what I saw as the common thread through all of my clients over the years was that they all had adverse experiences. Anyone who's been in a 12-step room hears things like, I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. And I think, well, why wouldn't someone be comfortable in their own skin? Like, something had to happen. We're not born that way usually. I became more aware of the trauma stuff. Fast forward a bit, and when COVID is taking off, I have to move into online practice. So I'm doing specifically EMDR, internal family systems therapy, a bit of CBT maybe, but primarily addressing the trauma stuff. As COVID was ending, the rehab I was working at wanted me to go back and run it, be the clinical director, manage their new program. And I decided that I didn't want to do that because I saw things philosophically different than they did. I didn't see addiction as the primary problem. I mean, it's a huge problem, obviously, but I saw it as more of a symptom of the underlying trauma. Like, people manage their trauma symptoms through compulsively self-soothing, and whether that's with substances, sex, gambling, food, work, exercise, whatever it might be. I wanted to address the stuff that was driving those behaviors instead of just taking those behaviors away from people, because it's a coping mechanism. It's how they soothe themselves. So I decided I was just going to do my own thing. And I designed Yatra based on all of the training and information that I had, all the scientific evidence about what's effective treatment for trauma, going back to all the literature. Did it in a specific order of operations to address things at certain times through treatment. And it's the treatment that I thought I would have benefited from the most when I was going to treatment to get clean. And that's kind of what led us to rent a property. We did it very short-term lease, 9 months, just to see if we had a business that would work, like if it would be effective treatment and if people would actually come. And after that 9 months, what we had found out was that, there's definitely a market for this, and our clients were getting good outcomes. Two of our first clients, one was 9 years sober and one was 14 years sober. And what they said was like, I'm doing all the stuff that I'm supposed to do through the program that I'm a part of, like the 12-step programs, which had helped them get their life back and was really beneficial in a lot of ways. And yet their nervous systems were still like hyper aroused, lots of anxiety, and none of the stuff underlying that had been addressed through their journey of recovery. And so, that just sort of validated, like, okay, so there are some limitations to what programs do. And obviously there's limitations to what we do. We don't have a worldwide fellowship of people available free forever, any time of the day. So what I thought was like, we can work quite well with 12-step programs. And that can be part of the aftercare of our plan, because I'm a member of a 12-step program. But I really just wanted to address the underlying stuff. And that's kind of what led to Yatra being there. And then one thing is, one of these clients I was working with online, and I would say, doing something like breath work, yoga, Tai Chi, something that helps to regulate the nervous system and help you to feel relaxed would be beneficial. And what he said was like, I get that it would be, but it's a really hard, like, it's a big ask for me to do that on my own in my flat, without having someone to support me in doing that. Like, getting the motivation to do it when I'm feeling so dysregulated is a big ask. And that kind of led to me thinking, okay, well, if I rented a property and brought that stuff right to your door, then it would be harder for you to opt out of it, and you'd get more comprehensive treatment than just doing something like EMDR online. So yeah, that's kind of what led to it. And it's been an interesting 3-year journey since that decision.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And I just wanted to clarify. So how long have you been on your personal recovery journey?
June 5th, 2003. Okay, so coming up on 22 years. Yeah. I mean, that's this time. There was a lot of times before that, like almost a year clean one time, a few months here, a month, 2 weeks, all that stuff. But this time consistently since 2003. So almost 22 years.
Amazing. Congratulations. And I love that you are taking such a comprehensive and holistic approach to, dealing with anyone's, mental health trauma, addiction and patterns of behavior. Because one thing I specifically see a lot in Australia's healthcare systems is that we like to deal with the presenting issue and that's it. And they don't blend everything else in. So for example, like mental health and addiction, right? They're completely intertwined, whereas they are treated separately here. It's like, we got to deal with the addiction first and then we can deal with the mental health. But they also don't look at what's going on in someone's life as well. Like, what are their relationships like? What are their finances like? What is their housing like? What's their education like? How is their spiritual well-being? Just all the things. And they don't look at what has led someone to this place, because as you said, like addiction is not actually the main issue, whereas like yes, it's an important part, but that is not what has brought you here. You have come here from a place of pain and suffering. Why the pain, not why the addiction, why the pain? Let's have a look at that. And that's something that so many companies, organizations, they don't delve into that. And this is why I do see a lot of people in the 12-step program, but also other programs as well, where they've only tackled one certain thing, or they only have the scope to deal with one certain element, and then they're still dealing with all these other things like anxiety as well, like you mentioned. That's a massive one. I see that a lot. But I just think that's incredible that you've taken like all of this life experience and then your work experience, you've seen what's worked, what's not worked, and you've been able to put that into something that is now your own, and here you are helping people in beautiful Thailand. How amazing is that?
Yeah, it's a bit surreal if I think about when I walked into treatment on June 5th, 2003. To think that I would be here doing this is, I mean, I owned a production company at the time. I was doing like shooting and editing of video and stuff like that. And when I got offered my first job in treatment, it was for $8 an hour. And I was thinking like, I don't remember applying for this job. But basically I knew that it was beneficial to be around recovery people at that point in my life. The thing about 12 steps that I found for me is that like a lot of, and again, huge proponent of 12 steps, member of 12 steps, but I think some people won't acknowledge the limitations of it. Like my sponsor that I had back in Canada, sort of unofficial sponsor, mentor kind of thing, great guy. Amazing, really knows recovery stuff really well. Like, we'll take you to meetings, done lots of service work, sponsors people, et cetera, et cetera. But he's not the guy to talk to about things like childhood sexual abuse. Like that's just not his specialty. You don't know what you don't know. And so, I witnessed someone in a program once that I worked at, not a 12-step program, but a 12-step based treatment program. A client came to him and said, I was abused when I was a kid. And this counselor said to him, you just need to let go of that. Just give that to God and just get over it. It's a long time ago. And I was like, that is so dangerous. Now you're like shaming someone for having a legacy of something that happened. And he didn't know what he didn't know. Right. And so I think it's important that guy's using, that young guy's using was all based on this abuse stuff. And then when he gets sort of that minimized by someone, I think it's a huge injustice to people to not treat them right. And, again, government funded, not a lot of money, not going to be paying for people who specialize in anything. So it's a lot of peer support stuff. So yeah, while that place offered a lot of good stuff to people, it just left some stuff undone. And we know that like there's a couple of big steps in the 12 steps that people tend to relapse around or resist doing. Step 4, where people have to look at a lot of pretty ugly stuff. People relapse around that. Step 9, going and actually like facing people that you've possibly harmed or ripped off or whatever, like that is hugely anxiety provoking, but we don't actually give anybody any tools to regulate themselves until step 11, where the meditation comes in. And I think that should be like step 1 is like learn to regulate your nervous system before you go into this work that is going to be really triggering for a lot of people. Like doesn't mean it'll be triggering for everyone, but for some people, thinking about going into step 4 or step 9 is so anxiety provoking that they'll avoid it. Then they start avoiding their sponsor, potentially just not want to do that work, right? Or just get loaded. So I think that, there's a lot of really good stuff in there. And I just wish there was more stuff at the front end that prepared people to do this terrifying work, right? It's really hard work and scary work. And a lot of people around the world have done it. And, kudos to them because I know for me, like those were really hard. And I don't know how I didn't get loaded through a lot of that process, to be honest. Like I just hung on for dear life, and I had a good support system, which really helped me. But if I could have like had some tools like breathing, like
such a big one. So simple, but it's honestly
it
makes such a difference.
Yeah, we hear it our whole life. Just breathe, just take a breath. But we don't understand like the importance of that and how it's actually scientifically proven to be beneficial to us for regulating the nervous system, expanding our window of tolerance, being able to cope with things better just by being able to be safe in our bodies. So I'm not suggesting that we rewrite the 12 steps. I think that there's like a huge legacy of good done by that. But I know that it's like anything else. There's no one size fits all in any, like, I don't think every person seeking recovery would fit in our program, and I don't think that,
of course.
Yeah. But whenever I say to someone, like I question some of that stuff about the 12 steps. Some people are like, oh, that makes sense because scientifically, blah, blah, blah. Other people push back against it. And I think I'm not against 12 steps. I look at it as like, if you go to a dentist, if you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. If you need braces, you go to an orthodontist. They work in the same field. They don't do the same thing. They work well together. And I kind of look at like treating trauma and treating addiction as that stuff. It's like, you do different sort of specialties, but they go really nicely together. And I think for me, because my underlying stuff wasn't addressed, I took the drugs and the alcohol out, but I'm like soothing myself through like short, intense sexual relationships because I want that connection. But then I'm in it and then I get freaked out. So I back out of it. But then I need the next hit of medicine. So I'm like back on online apps or whatever it is, right? And people are going, you're doing awesome. And I'm like, why don't I feel awesome? Like I feel like shit. I feel guilty and shameful after acting out just like I did with drugs. And it was because I was still medicating myself because the pain wasn't addressed. And then I went and I got some therapy around the sex stuff, and started addressing some of the underlying things. And that's where things started to shift for me better, where I felt like I could actually like live more in line with my values. I wasn't like in survival mode anymore. So that was important for me. And then that changed how I was in relation to women and to myself, I guess, most importantly.
Yeah. And I think that's such important things that you touched on as well. Like I actually have a company called Your Recovery that's launching fairly soon, which is an online mental wellbeing addiction service. But one of the things, like I've got beta clients, right? So they're testing the program, helping me with all the tech issues and whatnot while getting, free help. And one of my clients, he makes me laugh, but he has, I guess because like he wasn't for so long, he'd been through therapy, he'd gone to a lot of 12-step programs, other different support groups, all these other things. But every time he kind of went to these programs or treatments, he still didn't really go deep down enough to be dealing with what is the root cause of all these behaviors and, the relapsing and whatnot. And for him, it was funny because I was watching it kind of manifest in different ways. So, he would be sober, but then he would be drinking like 10 cups of coffee or like doing something else, like very he would just get addicted to something else. And gardening, he became like obsessed, like it was just going to the extreme level. And I was like, are you noticing these patterns of behavior? Like just because you are sober, it's all manifesting in another way because you still haven't dealt with that root issue. Like you haven't gone deep enough, and we need to like explore that. So yeah, I was like, it just made me think of that client when you were saying that. And I was like, it really does. It manifests in so many other ways when we aren't dealing with the root cause.
Yeah, like I'll use the word addiction because everyone kind of understands what that means. But I will also tell people, like, kind of think it's a bit of a shit word because it's got a lot of stigma attached to it. It's got like a lot of negative stereotypes attached to it. And also it's like everything right now, like it becomes a buzzword. People are like, oh, I'm addicted to lip gloss or whatever, like it takes away the power from it when we throw it around like that, like from a diagnostic term anyway. But I use the words compulsive self-soothing. And because then that way it's not about substances, it's about anything. And some of the traps, like your guy with the gardening, like when you're doing it in positive behaviors, so like if it's exercise, people are like, oh my God, you look so fit, and then you get rewarded for it. Or for work, they're like, oh, you really want Paris on your team, she'll work 20 hours a day, she's always on the email, she's always doing this. It's like, well, Paris, if you took that exact same behavior and put it towards crack, she would look like a train wreck. But because it's work, now you're like getting accolades for it, which means you're never going to want to stop it because now you're getting validated. But the behaviors, the relationship to the behavior is the same as if it was a substance. It's just that the outcome is a bit different. But you're still distracting yourself. You're still soothing yourself. And the gardening, I would see as the same thing. It's like you're gardening like that because you're not dealing with that stuff underneath. And you can't just sit and be, like you become a human doing instead of a human being. And what I did was drugs, and what other people do is like work or whatever it might be. But it's all that underlying stuff that's never addressed. And what we want to help our clients be able to do is just be. So in our program, while it's quite intensive, you get 4 individual EMDR sessions a week. You get individual art therapy, you get educational groups. We don't do group psychotherapy because with trauma, talking about it can be very difficult. The last thing I want to do is sit in a room full of people that I don't know and talk about all my deepest stuff, because there's a lot of betrayal traumas and stuff, where people don't feel comfortable to do that. So anyway, in the program, there's lots of things going on, but there's also downtime built into it on purpose, because if someone finds it intolerable to be bored or inactive, that's a good way in clinically. Like, what is it about boredom that you can't handle? Like, why can't you just sit with yourself? So it gives us another way in to look at a potential relapse happening, right? Like, if I'm going to go to some self-soothing behavior because I can't just sit with myself while I'm in treatment, then what's going to happen when you go home? And so, like, what's driving that, and can we get underneath it?
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well. Like when you mentioned that, I know I've done it myself. Like I've been really uncomfortable sitting with myself, which is why I was constantly reaching for these like quick fixes as well. Like particularly with, alcohol and other drugs, it's like an immediate relief. And so, naturally we're only human. We're going to take the easier option, right? But then it's like, if you really look at it, it's like, why can I not sit with myself? Why can I not be? Why is that so difficult for me? And actually really understanding that and like what I'm afraid of, is a really, I guess, powerful approach to then start that healing journey. But it's something a lot of people struggle with. Like even my partner, sorry, but I'm going to throw you under the bus here. He struggles so bad with that, and I constantly call him out on it, and he does not like it, but I can't help myself. But like,
fair enough.
I try not to, because I'm like, it's not my journey, it's his journey. Don't. but I can't help
Give
it
him my
anyway.
number.
He could probably do with a trip to Thailand.
Like it's, we kind of say it jokingly, but this is a very real thing that a lot of people, especially people in early recovery, a lot of times it's like, you've taken away my medicine and now I just have all this pain. So then, it's like becomes that whack-a-mole thing where it's like, okay, well, this one pops up, I'll deal with that. Another one pops up because I just keep fighting symptoms instead of what's actually causing it. And I know you quoted Gabor Mate, right? Don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. And he's right. It's like, that's the underlying stuff. And when I started getting into that, I started, like, a lot of pennies started dropping for me. It was like, oh, that's why I was like so self-conscious. That's why I was so afraid of being abandoned by people. That's why I would like walk out of jobs like this. It didn't matter if it was romantic, friendships, work relationships, anything. Like, I would act in certain ways in these relationships. And it was all driven by my attachment wounds, abandonment, like that kind of stuff when I was younger. I also had incredibly traumatic things happen as an adult, like being like held against my will and like lots of violence and all that kind of stuff. That leaves me with like quite an exaggerated startle response at this point. So I've, done a lot of work on a lot of things. There's still more work to do. There's always more work to do, I think.
Never ends.
Yeah. But there's a lot of things that there's myths about trauma and like, it's like, it has to be like sexual abuse or being in a car crash or a plane crash or a war zone or being assaulted or something. Trauma isn't what happened to you. Trauma is what you're left with after what happened to you. Oftentimes the beliefs we form about ourselves. So I always tell people, like, I came home from school when I was 6 years old. We were living on Vancouver Island. And apparently, as the family lore kind of goes, or the way it was told to me at one point, I came home and said, "Oh, where's dad?" And my mom said, "Oh, he's moved back to Vancouver." So I was like, kind of like, "Oh, cool. I have a dad in Vancouver." But, playing in like what we in Canada call soccer, which might be football to you guys or some of your listeners, playing a game and scoring a goal on a Saturday, and I look over at the sidelines and everyone's dad is there and my dad's not there. Like, I start forming beliefs about myself, like I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not important, people go away, things like that. And people might say to me, like, "Mike, you're 54 years old. You're talking about something that happened over 40 years ago. Like, get over it. Like, it's just your dad not at a soccer game." But it's not about the soccer game. It's about these beliefs that were instilled in me, which made it very difficult to navigate puberty and relationships in junior high school and adulthood. And I didn't have anyone to kind of mentor me and show me. Nobody talked about this stuff. Like, my mom is my hero, so I'm not trying to throw her under the bus, but we had like this no talk rule in the family. Like, we didn't talk about things that were uncomfortable. Like, we just didn't. So I didn't really have any safe place to kind of go and say, like, "Hey, you know what? Like, I'm pretty anxious about this whole like starting dating girls things." And I look at my peer group and they seem to know what's going on. And I feel like I don't know what the fuck is going on. And like, now I feel like I'm out on this adrift by myself without any sort of anchor point. And then I just had to muddle my way through. And you know what? The first time I drank, I was like, well, this works, like all of a sudden I didn't feel self-conscious, and I got, from the first time I drank, I had terrible consequences. I was super sick. My mom had to come and pick me up at this party. So generally speaking, that would be pretty embarrassing. I'm throwing up, all that, passed out. I couldn't wait to do it again in spite of the consequences, because I got relief from that like crushing self-doubt stuff. And that self-doubt stuff comes from my childhood. Like, I wasn't born with that. That was like gifted to me. And so like some of the myths about trauma is like, yeah, it's something like a soccer game when I was 10 years old and my dad not being there. When I talk to my clients about it all the time, I don't know if you can relate to this or if any of your listeners can. I feel super guilty if people do nice things for me. Like, I can't accept compliments very well. If you and I were to go out for lunch, I would be more than happy to pick up the tab just because I would enjoy your company and going for lunch. But if you go to pay for it, I'm going to feel guilty about it. It's like, well, why do I feel guilty about that? And I can go all the way back to like my grandmother when I got a Christmas present saying like, oh, when I was a kid, there was 7 of us and we only got one present to share. So I felt guilty for getting this Christmas present. And now here I am 50 years later, feeling guilty when a friend of mine wants to do something nice. Like, this is the legacy. But if I told someone about that conversation with my grandmother, they would never say that's traumatic. It's like, okay, well, maybe it's not traumatic, but it affects my life and I can get relief from that stuff. Right. Yeah. It's just about sort of having people learn where core beliefs come from, how compensatory behaviors come into play, and how this affects us in our daily life now. It's not about then, it's about now. But sometimes to get us relief from now, we have to go back then and clean that stuff up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Because that has been one of the biggest game changers, even for my own recovery, is understanding even what those core beliefs are. Because it takes a while to even acknowledge and become aware of what that is, because it's so deep rooted. It's on that subconscious level. You're not consciously acting on that belief. So you don't know initially what it is driving you. That's why you need to explore these areas as well. But I know for me, I had like a relative do some like really weird things. Like, she was not a well person. And whenever we were like, being looked after with her, she hated me. She hated me because I looked like my mum, and she hated my mum. So it was just like, I didn't do anything. I was a really young kid. Like, I'm talking like 4 or 5 years old. And she would just like lock me away in rooms while my siblings would go out to play, because she constantly felt the need to punish me. And I didn't understand why. Like, and so I was very confused. Like, I was questioning my self-worth at such a young age. And I was like, why can't I play outside? Or like, why am I in the timeout? Like, I don't understand. Like, and I'd sometimes get the timeout because I used her brush. And then she would wash it in front of me. Like, don't you dare ever like use this again. And I'm like, like, am I diseased? Like, why is she washing this? Like, I was so confused. And so that experience started to form these awful core beliefs of like, I'm not good enough. Like I don't deserve happiness, and something's wrong with me. And that carried on. And that's why, like, I had a very similar experience when I started drinking alcohol. I had the exact same reaction. I was like, whoa, like, hello, like, you feel good, love it. I feel so much better from whatever was internally going on here, all that turmoil. Like, that's just like mellowed me right down. This is perfect. Like, this is my answer to everything. And it became my best friend.
I love, I'm sorry that you experienced that, but I love the story because it shows, again, that the myth about like, oh, it has to be this big, like what we call big capital T, like life-threatening stuff.
Big T, little T.
It doesn't have to be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be big T. The accumulation of little T stuff is the same effect on my nervous system. So I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that when you form these core beliefs, and like you said, not even aware of them. I always look, when I talk to clients about it, I go, it's kind of like the operating system of a computer. It gets installed somewhere around the beginning. It informs how the computer runs. But when you're using the computer, you don't actually interact with it, because I'm not writing code, right? I'm using apps and programs, but but there's an operating system back there informing the computer of how to run. Our operating system is our core beliefs, and it informs me how to run. So I would go out on a limb and say someone who has core beliefs, not good enough, there's something wrong with me. I would imagine feeling quite insecurely attached in relationships. People are going to leave, quite anxious and that stuff, potentially leaving first so they can't leave, or putting up walls, or not getting in too deep. Like, this is typical stuff. Same, right? This is the stuff that doesn't get addressed through like traditional treatment, because they're looking at the drugs as the problem. But we have just demonstrated 100% of the people in this call saw the drugs or the alcohol or whatever as the solution to the problem, not as the problem. So if I was to talk to like my mother, what's Mike's problem? Oh, the drugs are the problem. Talk to Mike and I go, the drugs are my solution to the problem, which is living life, sitting with myself, being okay, the crushing self-doubts, the insecurities, the anxieties. So now you've taken away my solution and you left me with all the problem, but you think that you're actually taking away the problem. So it's like a lack of understanding about And this is really typical in a lot of rehab settings, is that they think the drugs are the problem. And I think like you're absolutely missing the boat a lot of the time. Now there might be people within these organizations that kind of get it, but like organizationally, they seem to just think, take the drugs out. Oh, you're 30 days sober, success. We'll put that on our website. 95% of people that complete our program are like, that's a success. It's like, but what happened when they walked out the door? I remember a client relapsing the day after they left, and the discharge summary wasn't done yet. And they're like, oh, that's a success. It's complete treatment. And I'm like, but he's already relapsed. But organizationally, it's like, that's not their goal.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. No. Yeah.
We have a saying at Yatra. I say, like, we're a clinic run by clinicians. We are not a business run by businessmen. We don't put profits over people. And just for complete transparency, even though it's probably an overshare and it's nobody's business, in 3 years, we've been profitable 1 month. And a lot of the times we're just like, we've given away over $300,000 in treatment in that 3 years, like sponsored people, scholarships, partial scholarships, cut rates, whatever, because I'm a therapist and I want to help people get well. And my accountant hates me for that, but that's okay.
All right, listen up, legends. If you're looking to experience the real Western Australia, there's no better way than with Why Not Bus, who is one of our sponsors. I've actually been on their tour, and let me tell you, it is awesome vibes, epic adventures, and I made lifelong friends. We're talking snorkeling with sea lions, manta rays, whale sharks, camping under the stars, and taking your time to enjoy the beauty of WA. Use my discount code PARIS2025 and get $300 off your next tour. Go to www.whynotbus.com.au. But I love that. I mean, you're sitting in your purpose and you're doing what you want to do to help people heal. You're not doing it to make money, although it would be nice, but Oh, I don't hate money, but I think if we are ethically sound and clinically excellent to the best of our ability, the money should come, right? The money will come. Yeah.
At this point, we've never done any advertising. We've never done any marketing. We're just starting to do marketing now, but it's all just been based on reputation, word of mouth. We have a client right now who came because his friend was a client before, who came because his friend was a client before. And now this client now wants his wife to come. And like, that's a lot of where we get our business from. And we're small. Yeah. We only have 7 beds. So it's usually, and they're usually not all full. Like, we keep it small and appropriate for people on purpose. I don't know how I got onto the business end of things, but I like this going back to like sort of addressing the underlying stuff, right? So what we do is, once we start off kind of how I would wish that 12-step would start off, is that regulation of the nervous system. So day one that people come in, they're doing body-based work. Like, we're going to calm that mind by using the body. So breath work, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, exercise, ice baths, steam room, swimming, like that kind of stuff. As they get regulated in the nervous system, what that means is they get out of the fight or flight, freeze response, the stress response. They get access back to their prefrontal cortex, where they can start thinking more clearly. Like, they're not in that survival mode anymore, so they can get access to clearer thinking. That's when we introduce some cognitive behavioral therapy to get at those core beliefs. But once we have the core beliefs, we then go back into the EMDR mode, because, and I don't know what your listeners would know about EMDR, but it's a therapy that processes and desensitizes traumatic events. Like, that's what it is. So once we have the core belief, say, I'm not good enough, my question to that client is, well, what memories do you have that support you having that belief? Like, where did that come from? Oh, I wasn't picked for the team. My first girlfriend cheated on me. I got fired. I didn't get a promotion. Like, whatever those sort of beliefs are, or those experiences are that support having the belief of not being good enough. Then we use EMDR to process those memories so that I get relief and from those core beliefs and don't get as triggered in the present day. We try to tie them together once they get access back to their cortex. And that can happen pretty quick. Like, it's a pretty safe feeling place. Like, a lot of people come in and like day one, they're like, oh my God, I've never been this relaxed in a long time. It's like, yeah, we've taken you out of a stressful environment. You don't have any stressors with us.
Yeah.
Obviously, we prepare all the food, we do your laundry, we clean your room, we take care of all of
Laundry
that.
as well? Damn.
Yeah, laundry as well. They'll iron it too.
So
Because
good.
it takes away some of those day-to-day things, not so that it's like luxurious or like that's not the purpose. The purpose is you can focus on other things while you're there. And I think that what we want to do is bring people relief from present day triggers due to past things. Past things might create PTSD like symptoms, right? Like, so say I was in a plane crash. Every time I hear a plane or see a plane, I get really jumpy. My nervous system gets hyper aroused. We'll deal with that. But also, those events might lead to negative core beliefs, like the ones that you were talking about and I was talking about. So then we go back into those memories and get relief from that. Not to change what happened back then, but to change how we respond to it today. Like, talking about when I said with you, like probably anxiously attached in relationships, et cetera, that's a painful place to be. Like, I want to be secure in my relationships. I don't want to think anytime I get in a fight with my wife, she's going to like divorce me. Like that's so anxiety provoking. So if we deal with the past stuff, my present day triggers become less. And that's where I'm less likely to relapse into compulsive self-soothing behaviors if I'm not feeling dysregulated. So we want to help people regulate in that. And I just think it's a different sort of treatment model to what I was accustomed to, but sort of the traditional stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to actually touch more on the EMDR stuff because I've had experience with EMDR, but it was a negative one. And I only lasted one session. So I was with there was two psycholigists, and they were doing the eye movement. And I was having to pretty much walk through the day of the most traumatic event of my life. And I had to start from when I had breakfast to when I went to sleep that night. And it was full on. Like, I hadn't actually gone over that day in that detail like that ever before. And I got to a point that I got so re-traumatized from it that I had to shut the session down because I was getting an insane headache. I was like, my brain hurts. I can't actually keep doing this. No, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. This is horrible. So I didn't do it ever again. But I know that there are benefits to it. And so I wondered, I was like, maybe did I not get, I guess, the appropriate way to be giving EMDR?
Yeah, that's not to interrupt, but that sounds so confusing to me because that's not EMDR.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to throw your psychologist under the bus or anything, except I'm
I don't
going
see
to
her anymore,
because
so that's fine.
Yeah, if you're listening, psychologist, go get retrained.
Listen up. Yeah.
Because EMDR is called the gentlest form of trauma treatment because you don't have to tell the narrative. It sounds like what they were doing was exposure therapy with some eye movements, which is a bizarre thing. That's that's not EMDR. Like, what you experienced is not EMDR.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
Standard protocol of EMDR. So we have a target, the memory. So you have this terrible memory, right? This is how you do it every time. Don't tell me the story of the memory. What single image, like a photograph, represents the most disturbing part of that? So say my memory I'm targeting is a car crash. The single image that represents the most disturbing part of that is the headlights coming at me, right? Before impact and all of that. Okay, that's the image. When you think of that image, what is the negative belief you have about yourself today when you think about that image? And it'll be like, I'm a fuck up, or I'm a failure, or something like that. Okay. What would you prefer to believe about yourself? Well, I would prefer to believe that I'm competent or I'm good enough. When you think about that image of the headlights coming at you, and you think about the words "I'm good enough," how true does that feel on a scale of 1 to 7? It's a weird scale, but 1 to 7. Well, 1, it doesn't feel true because I just told you my belief about that image is that I'm a fuck up. So it can't feel true that I'm competent or I'm good enough. Okay, we're going to change that. That's a treatment goal. We're going to change that belief. That's the R in the EMDR, reprocessing. when you think about that image and you think about the words, I'm a fuck up, what emotions come up for you? I feel shame, I feel guilt, I feel anxiety. How disturbing is it from 0 to 10? 0 is no disturbance, calm, neutral. 10 is the most you can imagine. It feels like 8. Where do you feel it? I feel my shoulders tense. I feel this knot in my stomach. I feel my head starting to sweat. Okay, think about that image. Think about the words, I'm a fuck up. Notice the shame, guilt, and everything that you feel in your chest and stomach. And then you do the eye movements. After a while, I stop and say, okay, what do you notice? And you just tell me what you notice. Any thoughts that came to mind, images that came to mind, emotions that you experience, or any sensations in your body. Then we just do more eye movements. We don't, like, if you were to say to, in my experience, I'm the client with the car crash, the therapist goes like this, what do you notice? And I go, oh, I thought about like when I got into the ambulance. Okay, just go with that. Just notice that that's what you thought of. And then we just do more eye movements. You don't go, oh, why do you think you were in the ambulance? Like, you're like, that's not EMDR. That's like talk therapy. That's Rogerian stuff. We're not doing that. So you just go, okay, what do you notice? Go again. What do you notice? Oh, I notice this. Okay, go with that. What do you notice? And your brain is making the connections that it needs to make to adaptive information. Potentially the adaptive information you have in your brain now is like, that danger's over and I'm safe. And I've been successful in a lot of things and I'm not a fuck up. And so we're going to connect that memory to these knowledges that are adaptive instead of maladaptive. And EMDR therapists, part of the training is like, get out of the way, stop talking so much. You don't have to tell the narrative at all. I actually tell clients, don't tell me the narrative. I don't want to re-traumatize you. There's also a protocol called blind to therapist, where I've have a client who has like potentially something that's quite shameful. So maybe they've been like sexually abused and they don't want to talk about it to a man. Maybe it's a male client. They don't want to tell me about it. And so I don't know that. I just go, do you have a memory you want to work on? And they say, yeah. And I say, do you feel okay to tell me a little bit about it? And if they say no, I go, okay, you don't need to. Do you have the image in your mind that's the most disturbing? Yes. Okay. Don't describe it to me. What's your negative belief? It might be something like, I'm damaged or there's something wrong with me. Okay. What would you prefer to believe? I'd prefer to believe that I'm fine as I am. Okay. How true does that feel? It doesn't. When you think of the words, I'm damaged, what do you feel emotionally? Where do you feel it? How intense is it? Let's go. I don't even know what the memory is I'm working on. I don't need to. It's called blind to therapist. So like, you telling your narrative in a real exposure therapy kind of way is not any EMDR I know of. And I think the difference is like some therapists are trained in EMDR and some are EMDR therapists, right? There's different levels of training in EMDR. There's like basic training weekend 1, basic training weekend 2, and then there's like advanced trainings up to the master class, which is like a week-long intensive. There's specific trainings that I've done for fears and phobias and all kinds of stuff. If someone's done weekend 1, they're encouraged to use it, but you stick to the standard protocol. What those people were doing with you, and again, I'm not trying to badmouth a colleague, isn't standard protocol. And it doesn't make sense to me because I've never actually heard of that. And I work with a psychologist in Australia. She's a trainer, an EMDR trainer. I'm not. But her and I have done a lot of our trainings together all the way up to the master class. We went and did that in Malulaba a few years ago. She has these EMDR addiction protocols training because we can desensitize, that's the D, desensitize euphoric memories as well. Like, what's the benefit? What do you get out of using? Do you remember that good feeling? And we desensitize that so that the triggers, we can desensitize specific triggers. So I work with her. I'm like, this might be a bit early of a reference for someone of your age, but I'm an old guy. Public Enemy has Chuck D the rapper and Flava Flav, who's like the hype man. I'm like the Flava Flav in our training. I'm the guy that's there kind of supporting her. We bounce ideas off each other. She's the primary trainer and I just kind of help out. If I said to her what your experience was, she would say to me, I don't know what that is. And she's an EMDR trainer. It doesn't make sense to me. It sounds like they were implementing exposure therapy and calling it EMDR. Now, here's another thing. EMDR is an 8-phase protocol. You don't start processing memories until you're in phase 4. Phase 2 is about stabilization and resourcing. And so if you don't have adequate stabilization and resources available to you, like breathing, maybe like recovery groups, family, like, some kind of stuff, practices that you can do, yoga, Tai Chi, breath work, etc. We're not going to process with you, which is what makes our center a little bit different. Is outside of the therapy room, everything that you're doing is phase 2 of EMDR. It's all stabilization. It's all about regulating people's nervous system so that we can do that processing in a very fast manner. I know that colleague of mine that I was talking about that I do the training with, she has a client that they haven't processed a memory in like, I think they're like 2 or 3 years in and they haven't processed a memory yet because the person's not adequately stabilized. So, what you're explaining to me doesn't sound like EMDR other than this, which isn't everything that EMDR is. So yeah, it sounds very strange to me. And I'm sorry that you had that experience. And I've heard other people with negative experiences of EMDR, but it's kind of like going to a meeting. You ever go to a meeting and it's like kind of a shit meeting?
Yeah.
You don't just give up on meetings and say they're all like that. And although I've talked to lots of clients, like I go, look, try another one, see if it's the same, etc. Because that doesn't sound like EMDR to me. And I'm really sorry you had that experience because it sounds extremely painful, unnecessarily painful.
It was so awful. And it was one of those things where for a long time, like this would have been back in, oh my God, 2014 that I had this done. And I was just like, never again. I'm not continuing this. Like, I'm done. And for so long, I was so against EMDR because I was like, I don't want to ever go through that again. Like, that was horrendous. But it was, what? It was actually our mutual friend, Chris Horder, who sadly has passed on now. He is also known as Chuck LaFlange on Ashes to Awesome. So for people listening, if you want to check out a really amazing podcast, he's still got hundreds of episodes up and they are incredible. But it was talking to him, and he introduced us, talking to him about my experience, and he was like, what the fuck? Because he had done it with you. I mean, you were so generous and gave him a scholarship, and he was able to come and get treatment through you. And he just was like, ranting and raving about how amazing it was for him and how it's just changed his life. And he's like, you need to try this again. Like, you need to try it again. Look into this. It's not like this. So he's like, he was just as confused. He was like, I'm not even like trained in this area. And that doesn't make sense to me. So that was when my head kind of started ticking over, being like, I probably should revisit that because I haven't thought about it in a long time. And, now it's being brought up. Okay, maybe that wasn't at all what I was being told I was receiving, and maybe it wasn't done properly or whatever. I was like, maybe I should look into this again and give it another go. So it was actually, it was Chris that opened my mind up to it again. Haven't done it yet, but I intend to.
Okay. Well, just shifting that mindset around it, because, in my experience, like, is EMDR going to be life-changing for every single person? Probably not. Like, different people respond to different things. But in my experience, when I got trained in it, I was working in Thailand and they sent me to Hong Kong to get trained. And I was like, this sounds like a bunch of like hocus pocus, woo-woo kind of like, because I'm a like evidence-based science guy. I don't believe in things that I can't see and touch. And I thought, but I'll take a free trip to Hong Kong. That'll be cool.
No, why not? Yeah.
And in my first experience, there's 3 of us, and we're all trainees. Like, none of us are like experienced EMDR therapists at that point. And they said, start with a memory that is maximum disturbing 5 out of 10. And so I thought about when I was 15 years old and I had like my first like big true love girlfriend kind of thing. And I found my skateboarding crew. Like, I finally found a place that I fit in, like my people. And I was already drinking, using drugs by then, but my mom's job was going to become redundant. So she got transferred to a bigger city nearby. And I remember sitting in the back of the van, crying because I had to leave my friends and my girlfriend and all this stuff. And that was the memory that I processed, because like, when I think about it, it would still upset me. And the negative belief I had about it was I'm not important because nobody consulted me if I wanted to move. Right. So the first thing the guy goes, and he's a trainee, so he doesn't really know what he's doing, but you follow the protocol. It's strict and you follow it on a piece of paper until you quite know it. And he goes, okay, what do you notice? And I went, first thought that came to mind, I said, this isn't going to work. And he went, okay, go with that. What do you
I
notice?
love it.
And I said, yeah, it might work for other people. Definitely not going to work for me. Okay, go with that. But you're just noticing what you're thinking, right? Did it again. What do you notice now? I go, I feel like there's this grapefruit in my throat. Oh, okay. Notice that. And we just kept going and kept going. And I started like just reporting back what I was noticing. And there was no judgment in it. There's no processing of that per se, like verbally. Um, and at the end of it, at the time I was like 45-ish or something. So this is a 30-year-old memory. By the end of it, not only did it not bother me, but that belief I'm not important had shifted. And that happened in like half an hour. And I was like, how can that be possible? And then I had a woman, I was the trainee, and I'm like having to do this when I move my fingers. What do I do? Like, I didn't know what I was doing. She had a boyfriend that she loved. And previously she had been engaged, and she walked into the apartment and her fiance was cheating on her on the sofa with someone else. So in this present relationship, she was terrified of he wanted to get married, and she was like, couldn't do it. And I'm sitting there with her and I go, fuck, sounds like you need a therapist, but it's me. So, oh my God, what do I do? So we did the processing and everything. Her disturbance when picturing him on the sofa with the other girl, 10 out of 10. By the end of like half an hour, 0 out of 10. And her belief, I'm not lovable, shifted to I am lovable, feeling true. And I thought, okay, how can that happen in half an hour? And phase 8 of EMDR, once you do the closure and everything, the next session you come back and say, okay, after our last session, where is that memory at now if you try to bring it up? So the next day in the training, because it's multiple days, I said, okay, so the thing we did yesterday, where are you with that? And she was like, I went up to my room, I sat with it. It doesn't bother me. I know that I'm lovable. I know that this man loves me. I called him and we're getting married. And I was like, what
Wow.
like half an
Amazing.
hour half an hour with someone who doesn't know what they're doing. I'm like, could that really be real? But this is like 2 very profound experiences in the first training that I did. And now we became Facebook friends, still married to the guy. Like, it's yeah. Then that happened from half an hour of EMDR with someone who didn't know what they were doing, but was just careful to maintain the fidelity of the protocol. Right. So if someone's sticking to the protocol, the evidence shows 3 things happen. Memories become less vivid, harder to recall, and less disturbing. That's what the evidence shows us. So, we're not whitewashing memories. We're not erasing them. We're not making sad memories happy. We're just removing that like gut punch nervous system, like disturbance level from them, and being appropriately, like, she's still like not happy about the guy cheating on her, but it doesn't have any power over her today. So that's some of the outcomes that you can get from EMDR, and you don't have to tell the whole story. And so, yeah, it's shocking that what you experienced, and I'm sorry you did that. I'm glad that Chris was able to kind of shift you a bit. And for anyone, I would say, like, yeah, if you give it a shot, if you're in Australia, you can get, I think, up to like 10 sessions covered or something like that with a psychologist.
Yes. Yeah.
And evidence, one study showed American veterans with a diagnosis of PTSD after 8 sessions can no longer be diagnosed with PTSD. Now, it doesn't mean they don't have any traumatic symptoms. It means there's sub-threshold for being diagnosed with PTSD. There's lots of evidence that it can work. And will it work for everyone? Not really sure, but I've had some good experiences with it.
Worth a shot.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I definitely want to explore that for sure. I'm just being mindful of the time, but I have a couple more questions I want to ask you before you go. So could you walk us through, like, a typical day, that someone would experience at the Yatra Centre?
Sure. Now, because we deliver our therapies individually, everyone's schedule is a little bit different, but there are some things that are standard. So, like, for example, someone might get EMDR, massage therapy, art therapy all in one day. Or some people might get them on different days. But you get out of bed, you've got yoga at 8 a.m, get the nervous system nice and calm, breathing going on. Breakfast, healthy breakfast. We have a garden. We go garden to table with a lot of organic foods. Obviously not everything, but as much as we can. Healthy breakfast, educational group that's an hour long. So everything, trauma, post-traumatic growth, neuroscience of trauma, addiction stuff, attachment. Like there's all kinds of different educational groups that we do. After that, you may or may not have an EMDR session. Like I say, you get it 4 times a week. The yoga, holistic, somatic, whatever we want to call them, practitioners also, other than the group yoga in the morning, they see people individually 3 times a week to work on specific things. So whether someone wants more with the yoga, or they want to learn meditation or mindfulness, some kind of somatic release from their body. So the practitioners do that stuff 3 times a week. So that might happen. Massage therapy, ice baths, and throughout your day, you're going to get offered all of these therapies. Art therapy, exercise. We have a Muay Thai trainer there. And also, like, for people who want like lower intensity stuff, it can be anything from walking around the block, riding a bicycle, walking on the treadmill, all the way up to like intensive Muay Thai training. We take people out into the community, excursions, beach. Like we're across the street from the sea, so there's like some beaches around and stuff that people get to go to. So there's like, you do a lot of the intensive work during the day, and then on the weekend it gets to be a bit less. Like some people have sessions, clinical sessions on Saturday. Some people don't. Sunday is an excursion day where we take people off to like islands or weather dependent, doing hikes, things like that. What we want is we want people to feel safe in their bodies and realize like you can be in recovery and have fun. And it's not all this crazy intensive work. They need a break from that. But yeah, typically you're going to get offered a bunch of different therapies, starting with the body up to the EMDR, internal family systems. We haven't talked about that yet. That's a whole other thing. If someone does go to Ash's Awesome podcast, I've done big in-depths with him on the types of therapies we do. Internal family systems is just meaning like we have different parts of ourselves. So if I was to say, hey, Paris, do you want to go to the beach today? You might say, well, like, part of me does and part of me doesn't. And what we do is we address these different parts because they're dissociative parts. Some of them carry pain. Some of them carry behaviors that protect from that pain. Some people that really resonates with, like, I know there's a part of me that loves to do drugs. And I know that there's a part of me that knows that that's not a good thing. So we will address that through therapy as well, implementing or integrating that with the EMDR. So yeah, internal family systems is part of it. So you get your psychotherapy is going to be EMDR, IFS, cognitive behavioral therapy, art therapy. We have a pottery studio. I forgot about the pottery studio because, doing body brain stuff is like really good for your recovery as well. Yeah. And then this is like core program stuff. And then other people will come and say, well, I have this specific thing I want to work on. Is there something we can do? Like we had a young woman from Canada, Indigenous woman, and part of her childhood growing up with her band, like I guess like what people would call like a tribe or whatever, she was on the rifle team. And so when she came to us, it was part of like meaning and purpose and mastery and connecting back to her roots and her culture. So we took her to a rifle range and had her shooting rifles. And a lot of the young guys were like, I want to go shoot guns. And we're like, that's not what we're doing. We are helping her to get back in touch with things that bring meaning and purpose to her life and connect her to her culture. So, we do, because we don't have like bosses other than me. If there's a clinical therapeutic value to doing something, then we'll try to implement that. We took someone to do rage therapy a while ago. Like we got a baseball bat and a bunch of plates and just let them bang the shit out of stuff because her primary therapist thought it would be therapeutically valuable for her. So, we do have some freedom to implement other things. It's very client-centered as opposed to a system. We're not working for the system. We're working for the clients, right? So yeah, we can change stuff up, but a typical day is going to be full of different types of therapies. And some downtime.
Yeah, amazing. And so it's an 8-week program, correct?
We will customize it for whatever people need. So yeah, most people, because the closest comparable is typical rehab, which everyone sort of has this like 28-day thing. So a lot of people will want to commit to an initial month. We don't do what rehabs do, at least in my experience. We don't try to extend people's stays. Like we will continually assess and say like, well, where do you think you're at? What do you think you need? Because the person needs to have some agency. We don't infantilize people. Like when people come in, we don't take away their phones. We don't take away their computers. We don't we don't punish people for having the symptoms of what they're there to have treated. If the phone becomes a problem, we see the compulsive use of it, we'll address it clinically at that point. But if it's not a problem, like I'm not like treating everyone like they're 5 years old. They need to be empowered to take some control and of their recovery, because they're going to walk out of our gate and they need to be able to handle that stuff. So I would rather we work through that stuff with them there than just like, you have a month with no access to your phone. And then as soon as you walk out the gate, you have 100% of the time your phone in your hand. Like it's just the gap is too big, right? So we just, it's just a bit different for us, I think. And we have aftercare, so online aftercare. So it's free.
Okay.
Group. We have a female group and a male group. They happen our time Saturday, which is in North America, because we have some Canadians and Americans that participate in it. Friday evening, which can be a triggering time for some people. So they have a group with us. It's free. It's forever. Men's group, women's group. You just log on. We also have an alumni portal on our website that has access to all the educational videos that we show. So they can, because it's a lot of information and there might still be in a bit of survival mode, not retaining everything. They can just click in and get access to all the videos. They're proprietary.
That's
We've
awesome.
had them made for us. So, we don't think once your treatment episode is done, like once your money runs out, then we're done. Like we don't think like that. Like we have 2 clients right now that have chosen to relocate themselves to Krabi and live around us. And they both come in every day, do training, sit in on the group, hang out, have a meal. Like, it's about connection and it's about supporting people the best way for each individual, as opposed to just like cut and paste for everybody. Cause that doesn't really work a lot. It works for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody.
No, and I like that you guys are client-led as well, because there are so many places that have their like set programs and it's like, this is what we're going to do. And like, this is it, no room for flexibility. So I really love that you guys are client-led and you're meeting what people need and in those moments as well. Last question for you, Mike, and then I'll let you go.
Okay.
So if people are interested in accessing your services, where do they find you? And do you have like any financial like payment plans? Like how does that work? What's that side of it?
Okay. So first thing, Yatra Centre, and we spell it the English way. So Centre is CENTRE. So YATRACENTRE.com. Our emails, there's a hello@yatracentre.com, Mike@yatracentre.com if they want to get a hold of me specifically, but hello will get you to our admissions team and everything. As far as payment, we can be quite flexible. So people in Australia can access their super to get treatment, and there's ways that they can do that. For other people, we have done things like payment plans. We've done partial scholarships. Like, I don't think, like, obviously we have bills to pay. We have like 15 staff members that we need to pay. We have rent on the facility to pay, et cetera, operating costs. So we need to get money. But I don't like that money is a barrier to people getting help. So we can be a bit flexible and try to help wherever we can, if it's an actual barrier to people, right? That being said, for what you get in the West, it would cost you probably 4 or 5 times what we charge. Because we're in Thailand, our overheads are significantly lower. So it is actually, even at full price, quite a bit cheaper than it would be in, say, Australia or Canada or the US or Europe or something. So.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go. I know you're a busy man, Mike, but thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And I'll have all your links in the description box as well. And you'll definitely see information about the Yatra Centre on our socials as well. So thank you again. And I look forward to chatting with you soon.
Yeah, me too. Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it very much. It's been a pleasure. Nice talking to you. And let's stay in touch and talk again.
Sounds good. All right. Have a good one.